Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
We'll be putting together an art book of a lot of the assorted images I've done for prints and for other commercial clients that have never been seen in a collected form before. I want to make it easier for my collectors to get those images more than just on your computer, but in print, where you can kind of more casually come upon it. Although using your phone to look up images is casual, but to me it's not. I like everything to be on paper, and I like to have something all kind of collected and combined where you can get to it in a library. And so our intent is to get a full book together of a lot of those images which I've produced in the last 10 to 15 years that have really not been assembled before.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Let me get my photograph down, and welcome to The Outer Limits. John Suntress here. We've got a good lineup today. Gabe Hardman, of course, and William Meyer. And we're talking about episode 30 of season 1. And that, of course, is Production and Decay of Strange Particles, a Leslie Stevens Outer Limits as opposed to a Joe Stefano one. And we'll talk about the differences in our discussion today. Welcome, boys.
Hey, welcome to William, and I'm just already here because I'm a co-host, so you don't really need to welcome me in that way. But this is going into this at the time, initially when you were starting the show, we were talking about how there are the Leslie Stevens episodes and the Joseph Stefano episodes, and in going through these, it turned out that that's the thing that everybody always says, but like going through these, it kind of turned out that there are not that many Stevens episodes, and the ones there are, though, he, for the most part, wrote and directed. And I think that they're sort of underserved in general. They're not, most of them have not been the better episodes. Borderland or the one that's escaping you right now where the same scene is played back and forth.
Yes.
But I think in a lot of ways that was because, at least apart from Borderland, I think it was because he was coming in to try to do bottle type episodes that would save them and keep them on schedule. And so, it wasn't always, it wasn't always the case that he had the time or, resources to do something great. In fact, like Stefano is quoted as saying that this episode was not something he would have bought if somebody else brought it into him. He would have, it wasn't quite the tone of the show. And this certainly is the most sci-fi-ish, straightforward sci-fi-ish episode that we've had, I think.
That's interesting. I would point to other interplanetary episodes as sci-fi, but I would say as an Earthbound, and like you said, in the premise of the bottle show, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, it's much more kind of an attempt at, apart from the interdimensional beings or whatever that may be coming through and possessing people, it's trying to be a much more grounded show than something like Moonstone or the, or the, specimen, whatever, I can't remember now, but there are definitely other shows with big sci-fi trappings. This one's just trying to be a little bit more hard sci-fi, not that it's necessarily succeeding, but it kind of is. It just maybe isn't succeeding dramatically that well to me. But
I agree.
What about you guys? William, what do you think?
I enjoyed it. Should I do a quick plot recap just so
Yeah, somebody should. Absolutely.
By all means, William.
contextually. So, and this is as I understand it. So, this scientist dude, Dr. Marshall, has this nuclear facility, and they're testing this isotope, and the isotope combines with a rock, an unknown element that opens a fabric in the space-time continuum into another dimension, and then these beings of pure energy come out of that dimension into ours and possess somehow. They fill the volume of humans somehow and take over some bodies, and they want to open the breach, and Dr. Marshall closes the breach, and he does so by building a contraption that these aliens are drawn to, and they think they can use it to open the breach. But then when it blows up and then there's a nuclear explosion, it seals the breach. The end.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
I was
one
going to
note
say
about the beginning of it. Just it's that he created like previously unknown subatomic particles in a collider, and that's what they put in the in the thing. So and it, at least according to the things that I read, I'm honestly not sure if this is textually in the episode, but that they accidentally come in contact with nobelium, which is, a real thing with one of those numbers higher than 100, and that you can make you could also make in a
laboratory.
In a particle accelerator.
Or
right?
a particle,
so,
okay, excuse me.
So like the it was those two things coming together that somehow ripped them. Like I say, trying to be hard sci-fi, also kind of bullshit, I think, probably.
Well,
I'm not a scientist.
And in some ways, with hindsight, a precursor to the China syndrome and that kind of story of a nuclear meltdown of some sort. And then also, weirdly, the solution is almost tied to the premise of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek '09 movie, where Spock puts the red matter into to counteract an explosion and creates a black hole, because essentially that's what the scientist's experiment does. Is the chain reaction kind of implodes on itself. We get this classic early '60s mushroom cloud, and then it goes in reverse, and everything kind of collapses within itself, sending apparently these newly created or zombies from this other dimension back to their dimension and sealing the connection between the dimensions.
Right. I just want to say I'm not going to insult Leslie Stevens in that way as to suggest that his writing is on par with the 2009 Star Trek movie as far as the science is concerned. But I think that he is, seriously, I think that he is genuinely trying to write something that feels, like something semi-plausible, and the Star Trek thing was a big ball of red something. And then
red matter. That's kind of J.J. Abrams bullshit red matter. Yeah.
What about? I think that probably everybody's big criticism of this episode is that it's just a lot of technobabble, and and that you can't really follow that particularly well. I have opinions about that, but what do you guys think?
Well, first of all, real fast, William, I want to acknowledge Trinzini, who says, to quote another reviewer who summed it up beautifully, this episode is strangely gripping despite a lack in plot clarity. And I would take out the strangely gripping. It is plotting. And maybe would have made a tight half hour. But man, there's a lot of tension about nothing.
It's just that there's not a central dramatic thrust to it. At a half hour, it would still be the same thing.
Well, but there is a crisis that obviously is in motion, but it, for whatever reasons, doesn't resonate, obviously, at least the two of us. And William, maybe you liked it better.
So just 1 second before you comment, William, I'm going to talk you down. So I'm sorry. I think it's just because there are no characters in the story. There's no compelling personal drama that can be set against the bigger sci-fi thing, the way that was very effectively done in some other episodes, like last week's episode, where our big sci-fi thing very nicely dovetailed with the with the character stuff and the drama stuff. William, I apologize for talking over you. Please,
No worries.
You have the floor.
I think just as a general, I don't know if it's my personality or if it's this given time frame we find ourselves living in, but I agree with that quote that was thrown up, in that I'm kind of drawn to this inscrutable, hysterical psychobabble where I know something is happening, but it's beyond my understanding. And just how particularly the actor who plays Dr. Marshall, which I'm sure you guys could talk more about.
George McCready. Yeah, George McCready, who was in The Invisibles as well, the previous Outer Limits episode, but also in loads and loads of, he's a very recognizable character actor from loads of movies.
And TV, absolutely.
Yeah, Gilda, Paths of Glory, Joseph H. Lewis movie I've recommended before, My Name is Julia Ross, but also I would say check out 2 Weeks in Another Town, the Vincent Minnelli movie that's kind of a quasi-sequel to Bad and the Beautiful. But go ahead.
I loved his when he would just stare off into space and sort of be seized by his fear. And the way he walked, I thought was an interesting, his body language was an interesting parallel to these zombie electrical creatures from the other dimension. Like, he had a very similar gait.
Yeah, that's funny. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit in between you guys, I think, because I do think that there is something kind of compelling about it. And I do think that it's that the tone and the feel of this episode are kind of neat. I like the kind of zombie-ish, nuclear, radiation suit monster guys. But I also, and I do feel like it doesn't matter that there's, I don't really have a problem with not understanding technobabble stuff. It doesn't matter most of the time. It's about whether you kind of get the gist of the drama behind it. And that's kind of where it falls short for me, is not quite, getting where we're going with it a lot of the time.
Do you guys know, and I'm trying to look up her credits, because she got a special guest star card in the episode, Swedish actress Signe Hasso. I'm looking up her IMDb listing that why it merited the special guest star.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that probably that's because her agent negotiated it. But
that's probably true too.
But like the one thing that I know that she was in, I did look it up, and I don't have those notes in front of me, but I know that she was in one of Ingmar Bergman's really early movies, which wouldn't have been a giant thing to be in at the time. He would have just been kind of like a small potatoes, local Swedish director back then.
She did do a few noirs. She did House on 92nd Street with Lloyd Nolan.
Yeah.
And she did Dangerous Partners and Strange Triangle. She was in a big movie with Gene Tierney and Don Amici, Heaven Can Wait.
Okay, sure.
And she lived till the early 2000s, and of course did her share of TV. I mean, Fall Guy and Fame, Quincy. She's in a Quincy. How about that? And I love that she is the strong character in this. This thing, and it's really almost. I was hoping she'd slap her very unballsy scientist husband, who, I'm afraid of dying.
I know. Cowardice is his only defining feature. He is a little one note of a character. I mean, she's kind of a one note character just by the fact that that's the only thing she has to do. Try to convince this guy to do something.
But even in that photo you just showed, whenever he goes into these reveries, he looks up a little. He cants himself towards the heavens, like somewhere out there is the thing that's going to kill me.
And he's so scenery chewing. He's so big,
Oh yeah,
but great. Like I love George McCready. I think he's awesome. I mean, I love that kind of, his over the topness. And I certainly think. I mean, imagine if there was just some, blank stock guy like the guy who plays the other, I don't have the name in front of me, but the other,
Leonard,
scientist type guy who was in that previous Leslie Stevens episode with the running it back and forth.
Is it John Duke? Is it
Yeah,
this
not
guy?
that guy, the other guy. But just imagine if there was just some John Gavin type guy who was the the lead in this, and who was just completely blank. That wouldn't work at all. At least with George McCready at the center of it, at least we've got somebody who's like entertaining to watch.
Well, and really, actually, some other familiar faces, and we always do bring it back to, of course, Stony Burke, the other Leslie Stevens show, but Star Trek. And man, you got Rudy. You got Rudy Solari, who I think does a hell of a job in this, and is initially one of the survivors of these takeovers. But he is and again, this is a different time when white guys would play other people of color. He plays the Native American brave that is against Jim Kirk in that episode where Kirk thinks he's a Native American god.
Oh God, right?
Yeah, Kirok. And he's the one. Behold the false god.
God, what's the episode called?
This Side of Paradise, isn't it? Or no?
Well done, William.
Yes, I believe that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. Yes, absolutely.
I am too. That's it. And I'm sorry, it's a cheeseball episode.
It is.
But what makes it believable again is Shatner embraces the dumb, and is like, "Hey, man, I'm an Indian god," and I mean, he's just literally hugs himself a couple times because he can't believe how great his life is.
He has
yes,
a
he does.
in that episode.
Miramani and his beautiful Native American wife, Miramani. Sure, come on. Oh, you know me, man. I know that much. I know are the various names of the characters and stuff.
In third season, like the most embarrassing third season Star Trek.
Trinzini points out that McCready says, "I'll stay here with the women. You guys handle it."
You brought up the 2009 Star Trek. Of course, Leonard Nimoy is in this episode.
Oh, was he in Star Trek too? Because I
occasionally, not every episode, but occasionally.
Leonard Nimoy, as Sir Lawrence Olivier used to refer to him.
And you can't help but notice the parallels of Wrath of Khan, with him
100%.
exposing himself to radiation in order to save his buddies.
It's like the same scene, basically, except that he's actually arguing for it and has some level of passion. I mean, which obviously Spock couldn't have. I'm not in any way denigrating like one of my favorite movies ever. But yeah, I noticed that as well. I thought that was hilarious that that it's such a similar scene as the end of Khan.
Plus, I really do love pre-Star Trek Nimoy when he shows up in various shows and everything, and he as he always would point out, did television dating back to 1950.
Right.
So I mean, really got all those Ziv syndicated shows, and he was on really early black and white Dragnets.
Yes.
And all those shows. So no, I do enjoy seeing Nimoy in this stuff.
He was also in a Stony Burke episode, which I guess is probably where Stevens knew him from. But I watched that one. It's a boxing episode. But Nimoy says that he up until Star Trek he never worked as an actor more than 2 weeks at a time for 15 years. So it's. I mean, I think that we talk about these people who are, working actors who, they were basically they only did guest shots on TV shows and stuff like that. And you don't really think about what that means as just like a career and a life to only be booking these things that are, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a couple of days. And that's when you look at somebody's IMDb page and it's all just, guest shots on shows. They are the odd person out coming in, doing a couple of days and moving on to another job all the time. It's a pretty, that would be a pretty rough, demanding life. So,
two great actors that talk about that period in their career that I've seen in various interviews. Of course, the great Ricardo Montalban talked about when he was guest starring on a Bonanza, and it was a really he was a Native American trying to acclimate to the white world, and it was this really kind of heavy Bonanza, and the regular cast just blew him off and wouldn't show up to help him out on his scenes and
read off-camera lines or whatever.
Exactly, be the off-camera guy. And he finally kind of exploded at them and said, "Hey, I'm an actor, and you guys are giving me nothing. How dare you disrespect me? I know I'm not here every day, but come on, help me out." And he said one by one, they all are like, "God, I'm really glad you said something, and I apologize for my..." None of them would own up to do it because they all did it, but they all thanked me for saying something. And then the other guy like that, and I love it. And why am I blanking right now? Oh God damn it! Better. Damn it. Jesus Christ. Cranston. Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
Bryan Cranston talked about, and I might have even mentioned this before in another episode, but one of his first roles, he was in Jake and the Fat Man, and he was opposite William Conrad. And by that time, William Conrad, as great of an actor as he was, especially on radio, but even early television and film, Gabe and I, of course, share an affection for one of his Jack Webb movies, 30. But by the late 80s of Jake and the Fat Man, William Conrad had checked out and was just picking up a paycheck, and was not there at all for any of Cranston's scenes with him. And yeah, would not be off camera like feeding him lines at all. And he goes, it was such a letdown. He was really looking forward to working with Conrad, and just wasn't there. So yeah, it is tough. And also, real fast, I want to point out another guy, and that's Robert Fortier, who again, man, all the Star Trek connections. This is the guy, and William, I'm going to count on you to remember the title, but it's when the aliens take over the Enterprise, and they
make the little cubes, right?
Yes. And he's the alien. They're not used to being in human form, so all of them are able to corrupt these aliens with human foibles, and Scotty gets drunk.
They're going to Andromeda.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And weird
this
hair.
side of Andromeda. No, that's not it.
But
no.
I don't recall.
But it really is one of the great humor moments
like
in Star Trek is Scotty getting this guy drunk.
And what's the guy's name who's the lead alien in that one? What's that actor's name?
Warren Stevens.
Warren Stevens, right. Yeah.
That's the famous line where the alien asks Scotty, what is the alcohol? And Scotty looks at it and says, it's green.
And God,
that was good stuff.
Absolutely, man. No. I completely agree. And Michael Cooper keeps going off on Star Trek tangents, and to keep us on target, I appreciate the comments that Michael is making, but I won't share them or maybe I'll throw them up as we're discussing. But unfortunately, they have nothing to do with this episode. And
it's a second season Star Trek episode, right? Or is it
second? Yeah, first or second. I think it is second. Probably second.
Yeah.
Great, but yeah, fun episode.
So, did you guys notice that the beginning, in the very first shot of that establishes the lab or whatever, the electricity thing is already going on? Like, what the fuck is that? Like, I mean, seemingly it was a mistake, or they didn't have a clean. How can you not have a clean plate of something that you're putting, visual effects? I don't understand.
Are we chalking that up? Us three are deciding for all time. Are we chalking that up to an editorial goof, a gaffe, or is it insinuating something that it's an external, or it's affecting the electricity in the air, or?
But nothing's happened yet. The central thing hasn't happened yet that would have caused that. The reason that I don't understand why it would, how that would, it's hard to understand how that would be a screw up in a certain way, though, because it's finished on film. In order to have that, you have to make an optical, right? Back in the day. So that costs money. That means you have to have enough of it, or you have to print it again or whatever. Like, you have to go out of your way to make this mistake, basically. So, like, it's, they would have the clean plate of the exterior of that building that they shot. I'm pretty sure the building, because very clearly all the other times they're outside where they're going in and out of buildings and down ramps and stuff, that's the MGM lot. Those are buildings on the MGM lot, right? So, and I've spent tons of time there, the now Sony lot. And so I can't place what that building is that they show as just the kind of generic exterior of the lab, but I'm pretty sure that it's just one of the buildings on the lot. Maybe it's not there anymore. I'm not sure, but yeah, and also when they're towards the end, when he and the wife are in the
concrete bunker.
The bunker?
Yeah, not before the bunker, when they're in the thing where, she's doing something with dials and he's going off and doing his bit. Like, there's a big booth up behind him, and that's just like that's on the stage. That's just the inside of a stage, right?
Sure.
With a control booth for live TV up there, so like, I think that there, so this, I think one good thing about this show in a lot of ways, though, is that even though it is a sort of bottle show, I think they managed to work the production values of it pretty well, and it doesn't really feel as cheap as it probably was.
A lot of stock footage for civil defense and
Yeah.
things like that as well. And it's certainly of its time. And William, before you speak, I want to point out, and I'll share the screen, you pointed us to this really cool article that someone had written about various television productions about, the threat of, nuclear energy and everything. And I thought it was great. And acknowledged
Atomic Scare.
Yeah,
as portrayed
TV
on
and the
television.
Bomb. Yeah, from the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, TV and the Bomb. And here's the front page of that. Reba Wisner. And there's, of course, Gilda Radner and Dan Aykroyd from the 70s. And it really does go from the 50s all the way up through at least the 80s, I believe. Well, at least the 70s, I guess.
This author has also written about the use of music in atomic films and how that influenced early science fiction. I saw her give a presentation on that last summer. So if you look her up, she's got a lot of interesting stuff tangential or connected to the Outer Limits.
That's very cool.
I'm putting the link in the chat, everybody. So if you guys want to read it, tremendous, really, really interesting article, and points out one of my favorite 70s. Looks at the threat of the ease that people can get nuclear, their hands on nuclear stuff. That great Barney Miller episode where the college student builds the atomic bomb. It's such a great episode. They have no idea what it is, and finally at the end of Act 1, Dietrich walks in and goes, "What the hell are you doing with the atomic bomb?" Commercial. It's a fantastic episode.
I don't remember that one. One of the things, relating it to other TV as well, our pal Ian Brill, who was not able to join us tonight, pointed out that this episode is quite a lot like an episode of Doctor Who, where the Doctor just never shows up. And I think that, it's and like that's both kind of like an amusing way to look at it, but then when you start thinking about it, it's like, it set up this situation, and there was never the character who was the one with the determination and the vision to pull everybody together to save them all. You had to rely on the kind of paralyzed, cowardly guy to do it. Which, when you think about it that way, it sounds a lot more interesting. I mean, it sounds a lot more interesting than just having a sort of straightforward hero to come bail you out. I do think it could have grappled with it a little better, but I do think it's kind of an interesting idea.
We have a very intricate lock, but no key.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned
real fast, William. I was going to read what Ian's wrote. And he said this, like Gabe said, this is a Doctor Who episode where the Doctor doesn't show up. You have a faceless enemy created by radiation, a stately yet arrogant scientist that is responsible for everything. And there's some even timey-wimey stuff at the end. One can imagine the BBC seeing this and talking to Leslie Stevens about doing a United States version of Doctor Who in the 60s. Who would play the Doctor then? Robert Lansing, Michael Renee, Tony Randall? I love all of those suggestions. Especially Robert Lansing. I'm a massive Robert Lansing fan.
Yeah, Robert Lansing is great, but my feeling though about Doctor Who, like my favorite doctors are Patrick Troughton or David Tennant, right? I like the I like the goofball who could be dangerous, but also is I like the mashing up of tones. So I feel like Robert Lansing might be a little stiff for it.
Well, yeah.
Maybe Roddy McDowall would be a decent doctor.
Interesting. Sure. What's your favorite Doctor, William? Mine is John Pertwee.
My man, John Pertwee.
Yeah, I really did. I just appreciated. Yeah, I kind of.
He drives around in a car and never leaves Earth, and nothing fun ever happens.
Inferno is one of the most incredible Doctor Who episodes of all time.
And very connected to this episode as far as theme. No, I agree, man. And or even the Three Doctors opening that doorway to another dimension and stuff, and the way Omega, as they call Omega, comes through. And I'm a big Pertwee fan. I appreciated the action. I appreciated Unit. I thought the humor coming from Nicholas Courtney and the other Unit soldiers were great. And I did. I mean, I agree with you, Gabe. I love Pat Troughton, and I love David Tennant. But I think at the end of the day, it was
I have
really
nothing
cool.
against Pertwee. I don't really have anything against any of them. But I mean, I just getting back to the episode.
Yes.
I think that the weird thing about McCready's character and the way he's written is that he's constantly just guessing at what's going on, and he's always right. So, like, that's not a great dramatic take on stuff, right? I mean, it feels like he needs to be learning something. He needs to be, like, going through something in order to give you some sense. I mean, I think that maybe it was in that My Life in the Glow of the Outer Limits blog or something, but they were talking about how, comparing this sort of negatively to It Crawled from the Woodwork, because they have similar, ideas, and It Crawled from the Woodwork has nothing credible science-wise in it. It's the one where the dust bunny becomes electric and then, whatever happens, right? But, I mean, what it does have is great characters, and and kind of relatable characters, and just a way of bringing together the big crazy sci-fi stuff and characters that can kind of develop and be interesting over the course of an episode, which this doesn't quite have.
Can we talk about the stock footage, please?
Please,
because
sure.
I'm chomping at the bit here.
Oh, please.
Just as an aside from the episode itself, the footage is so chilling. For those who haven't seen it, the end of the episode when the bomb goes off and the gateway closes, they cut to stock footage of actual atomic tests, and then they play the footage forwards and then backwards. And it looked somewhat familiar to me, so I wanted to find where it was from, and I looked to the internet, of course, and on YouTube. If you at a later time, not now because you're watching us, if you type in the atomic test in Nevada, you can find a British Pathé film from 1955 that has this footage in it, in a much different context, obviously. But it was one of those towns that they built where they put the dummies into the homes, and they fill the cupboards with canned food because they wanted to see what the radioactivity would do to the food. And they did these tests to determine what the radius would be for safety and radioactivity. And this particular film, it's really short. They bring in a bunch of international observers to watch what ends up being in this Outer Limits episode. And the voiceover, I mean, we're talking about atomic explosions. I don't know how somber the voiceover could be and still, be and be appropriately somber is what I'm saying, because the voiceover in this, I won't say it's chipper, but it's a little there's pep in the voice, and I'm like, yeah, we're testing nuclear bombs,
right? That Pathé guy, he's always upbeat about shit. Like those Pathé films are great for research. Like, trust me, if you're working on a period movie, those are the things you want to seek out. Like the best research that some of the best research we had on Ford versus Ferrari were the Pathé documentary films. From the race.
That's amazing. That's terrific. Another great documentary that is longer, from the early 80s, and one of those films that has been preserved because of all the archival stuff they had in regards to this period, was The Atomic Cafe from 1982.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And that's a terrific movie. It's available on YouTube. I believe Kino Lober has an authorized version of it that it sells. Fantastic movie. Actually, that's what I thought you were going to mention, William. But, and for everyone who's seen, certainly, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, that atomic town that Indy is in before they nuke the fridge is a great example of what William's talking about.
The Pathé descriptor, if you scroll down, it says this is where that was meant to be. They explicitly call out that scene.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Let's not talk about that. scene from the Indiana Jones movie.
I understand.
No,
I'm a little more
not
forgiving
for
than
any-
others.
Not for any personal reason, just because it's not very good.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's a very obviously, I again, it's Indiana Jones. I had no problem with it, but it's like it's adventure fantasy. It's like
Sure,
okay,
sure. That actually, that is a very recognizable place for that kind of thing.
And also again, this subject very much of its time, and that's why I do appreciate Outer Limits, and especially these early ones, because it really is kind of ripped from today's headlines. And you had other shows doing the same thing, like you had The Shelter and Twilight Zone, and Time Enough at Last, the Burgess Meredith episode, where he gets locked in the vault and avoids a nuclear explosion. That's not fair. That's not fair.
But I kind of feel, in a way, I feel the opposite, because I feel like this is the kind of thing you get on another show. That's, and so much of, to me, what's cool about the Outer Limits is the stuff that you don't get on another show. Particularly 2 episodes from now is an episode that you would never get on another show. It's crazy and interesting and full of stuff that, is way less conventional than this is.
To that point, Gabriel and John, because I'm drawing a blank, what from other, if you had to keep this episode as it is, but we're allowed to add to it from other episodes of Outer Limits, what are the elements that you think are missing when you're saying that this doesn't feel like an Outer Limits is?
That's good, William, because honestly, I wanted to talk about the difference of a Leslie Stevens Outer Limits versus a Joe Stefano Outer Limits. Gabe, if you've got a ready answer, go for it. Because
I've probably sort of said this already, but but I think that it is just about, on one level, maybe being a little bit less literal about the science, right? Doing something that's a little bit more abstract and a little bit more outside the realm of what what you would get on a more conventional sci-fi show. But definitely it's about the fact that Stefano, even if it doesn't always work, really invests in character, and he is, he's coming to it from a point of view of how do we tell this weird story from the point of view of characters and dramatize their situation and their personal situation, very much like last week with the, with the couple and the way that their personal story played out against this big sci-fi story, and they resonated against each other. This just doesn't rise to the level of drama in that way, because we don't have anything really. We don't get much out of these characters. You don't need to know a lot about characters in a story. You need to you understand the situation they're in and have a kind of compelling reason to empathize with them. And I don't think that we have that here. And when you're talking about something so big as, ripping through the fabric of space or nuclear, devastation, you really need to ground it with, understandable, interesting, complex characters, and even better if they talk in wildly elevated, crazy Joseph Stefano talk.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I don't have a comment in terms of what else to add to what Gabe just said, but I do want to point out another great character actor that's in this, and that's Joseph Ruskin. And you might not be able to tell from this picture, but again, another Star Trek vet. He is the, how would you put it, the prison guard in the Gamesters of Triskelion.
Oh, yes.
Bald guy with the
crazy
beard.
makeup. Yeah. With the sort of,
and the red eyes and everything.
Yep.
And he's terrific. And my God, has been in a million things and was really active until his death in 2013. He lived to be 89.
Oh, nice.
And really had a hell of a career. And again, one of those 2-week actors that we were discussing earlier and stuff, but tremendous character actor. Big fan of his.
That's awesome.
So.
I don't know. I mean, I think that we more or less did this one, unless anybody else has something,
if from the Peanut Gallery, anybody have any other comments? I mean, again, Trinzini says at least production in Decay has action going minutes into the opening scene, and hardly lets go after that. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's true that the it actually has a teaser that's a part of the episode. It's not just
Yes.
replaying something later in it, which is kind of cool.
Right, and
I
that's
have
he makes that point as well. He says it's a prologue rather than a teaser.
I got to give it to Peach, to Kenny Peach, that he did a good job. That he did a great job with, especially the stuff in the in that containment chamber and that kind of motivated lighting and stuff. I thought all that looked great, and I think that some of the stylishness of the photography really helped this episode.
Also, this is in the running for the loudest Outer Limits episode, don't you think?
Yes.
The decibels just stayed at an even keel.
Oh yeah,
but you still have to imagine it coming through that tiny little speaker on the side of your TV.
Right.
Did we not mention? Oh God, do I have a picture of her? Hold on, I'll get one. A stock Leslie Stevens actor, who of course later shows up in Incubus, and that's Allison Ames. And I will get a picture of her in just a second and show you guys who I'm talking about. But the younger blonde,
that married?
Yeah, that's Mrs. Leslie Stevens. Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
okay,
that's why she's back over and over again. And
sure,
it is my hope that we will talk about Incubus.
Totally, we have to.
I think that's it. Even if we just do a show that's like talks about a couple of these side things altogether,
I'm for it.
It'd be great. Yeah.
No, I agree. And to be honest, I wouldn't mind delving into Stefano. And I mean, low hanging fruit obviously is Psycho, but no, I think these guys are so important to the show that, and also let's explore their other projects. And of course, as we've discussed before, Leslie Stevens continued to produce television into the 70s and 80s, and Buck Rogers comes immediately to mind. So in more sci-fi. I'm for it, man. So I'm cool with that.
If I could throw out Wah Ming Chang's name as a possible topic of discussion for his visual effects work here, and of course Star Trek, and you just don't see his name on screen.
Absolutely, yeah, you don't see his name on screen. I mean, there's only like 3 credits for Projects Unlimited, and I've done my best to bring him up, and point out the designs and stuff that he's done through the series. I mean, like there is a very distinct style to the creature and the creatures and the sculpts and stuff that is a real bridge between this and the original Star Trek. You could really see the continuation of that style, and it's from him. It's because a guy actually did it. Didn't arise from nothing. None of these, Star Trek isn't real. It's not some place you fly around in and meet aliens. It's a guy in, Hollywood in a warehouse who designed the things.
Understood. Next week, we'll be discussing The Chameleon, which has a lot of interesting layers to it. A Robert Towne script, which is very cool. And, of course, a Robert Duvall performance.
Yes, all the interesting Roberts are in that one.
Indeed. Absolutely. Now, Robert Preston, what's that?
Okay.
No Culp.
No
Robert Culp.
No
Robert
so maybe
Preston.
not every single interesting Robert, but there are definitely
lots of good ones. No Robert Lansing,
involved.
Unfortunately. Someone, and again, I can't help it. I always got to defer to Star Trek. Someone said, my buddy John Price said, Assignment Earth was the lamest Star Trek episode, which of course was the backdoor pilot of that show. So, or at least that was the premise. Yeah. Robert Lansing and that, and I'm like, Robert Lansing is kind of one of my guys that whenever I see him, in fact, I keep meaning to get that one interesting 4th season of The Equalizer where Edward Woodward suffered a heart attack during the season, and they had to bring in, first of all, Robert Lansing had a lot more to do that season, but also another great Robert Mitchum, brought in essentially to fill the Edward Woodward role.
I only vaguely remember this happening, but yeah, right.
And obviously Mitchum had so many great miniseries and TV movies during his later portion of his career, but to see him on weekly episodic TV like that in several episodes, to me, it's like, I gotta watch this again, man. I love, old man Mitchum is just as exciting to me as 1940s or 50s Mitchum. So,
a great, very, very late old man Mitchum performance is in Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man, I totally I recommend seeking that out.
I agree. And again, Trinzini, great comments tonight, man. Stefano's The Ghost of Sierra de Corbre could be discussed. Have we talked about doing that, correct?
That 100%. Like
Yeah.
That's. I think we should do an entire episode about that because that is essentially just another episode of The Outer Limits that nobody really got to see. Martin Landau stars in it. It's Stefano wrote and directed it, and it's shot by Conrad Hall. It is an episode of The Outer Limits. It just was basically a pilot for something else, but that was not co-opted into the show when it wasn't picked up.
I want to see if there are other great names. No, we can. I suppose we can hold off in terms of other great names for next week's episode. The Chameleon. Vic Perrin.
Oh yeah,
is in it. Very cool. Oh no, shame on me. Of course, he's always in it. He's the control voice. Shame on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the control voice, I'd like to just call out one shot in the opening. During the control voice's opening, there's a shot of a screen with what I'm assuming are intercontinental ballistic missiles rising in a very jagged line, reminiscent of the video game Missile Command. It looks almost identical. And it's like chilling because
I love that game.
At first, you're like, what are these lines? And then when it hits you, you're like, oh, they're all going to some target. And I mean, we talked about the deficiencies, but on the plus side, I think, this is searching for the vein of nuclear Armageddon and atomic despair, and it's hunting for that.
Although there's, at the end there when they're in the bunker, and they're like, here, hold up this little slide in front of your face. It's like, I always think, why do you need to watch it, right?
Yeah,
it's going to happen or not out there, whether you watch. It's not, it is not literally, quantum mechanics. Looking at it is not going to change it. So just don't look at it. Like, just save your eyes.
And then she says, when's it going to go off? And he says, now. Like, how did he
although,
was he counting
actually,
in his head?
You know what was great? One thing that really stuck out to me that I really liked, though, is you were talking about how loud the sound design was throughout the episode. That moment where it all goes away right before the blast, which feels like the moment holds longer than you would normally. And it's like, wait, did the audio go out on my player here or whatever? And and then then it comes back. Quiet loud is the greatest thing in the world. Like like the best, most effective thing ever. The Pixies knew it, Glenn Miller knew it, and so did apparently Leslie Stevens.
That's awesome, man. All right, I guess that wraps it up. I mean, would you say, gentlemen? I mean, are any other final thoughts? All right, fair enough. Exactly. Well, the co-host has spoken, so I defer to him. And thank you all for watching again to The Outer Limits. Next week again, episode number 31, which will be a fun discussion. The Chameleon, featuring the writing of Robert Towne, the acting of Robert Duvall, and no Robert Duvall or Lansing in sight. So until then, thank you very much for watching. William, excellent observations as always. Ian, I loved your comments, even though you weren't able to be here tonight. And Gabe, well, you were here, so that's good.
Oh, well, thanks, John.
We'll talk next time, everybody. Thanks a lot for watching. That would be watching and listening.
All right, we're done. Let's get out of here.
I was going to say, we now return control to you. Thank you very much for watching. We'll talk next week.